right, so this time I decided to actually read some of the books on my physical bookshelf, and one of the things that makes me buy books is obviously YouTube. I am not ready to tackle the mountain of books I've just gotten from recommendation videos that I have bought because A, the cover is pretty, or I don't even know what the plot is, but someone on YouTube said it was good, so I bought it. Instead, I figured we'll go with my least amount of recommendations or influences by YouTube, and that is going to be authors on YouTube. So I follow their channel regularly. I watch everything they post, and when they said that they wrote a book, I'm like, add to cart. Obviously, we have to start with Daniel Green, everyone's favorite goblin, and I was so impressed and happy with these books. These are surprisingly ones that I read, the majority of them anyway, the moment they got released, and I got my hands on one, with the exception of one, because life got in the way. But I bought it on release day, which is also true for other of the authors whose books kind of just sat on my bookshelf for a while. Regardless, does not matter. All right, we are starting with Breach of Peace. First of all, can you look at this? Look at this beautiful cover. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, I'm very influenced by pretty covers. I was really impressed by this first book. We'll get into the second one after, but essentially, overall thoughts. I was most impressed by the characters in the first book and the events that happened, but then the second book got me more excited for the third book, which has yet to be published. So while I didn't like the second book as much as the first, it did get me more invested in the overall world and plot and what was to come. When it comes to Breach of Peace, I was most impressed by the character work. The three main characters, Clid being the main of the main characters, was definitely my favorite. Love Clid. I love how she is a smoker and like a compulsive smoker. So all of a sudden she's just holding a cigarette. She's trying to quit and it's just like, where did this come from? Why am I smoking? So I love that element of her character. I loved her relationship and dynamics with the other main cast. My only criticism of this first book was that I just wanted one more scene, something to like cement the relationship and dynamic and just see a little tiny bit more character interactions among the three of them, or even just two of them. I wanted one more scene of character interactions, but it's a very short book. Essentially, it starts off with a horror scene. They are detectives or inspectors and are investigating the death of this noble family. Specifically, there's a child murder. I feel like that needs its own trigger warning for how brutally it can be impact on some people. That was a big thing when this first came out. But they are investigating this attack on a noble family, supposedly by rebels, and from there you unveil corruption, conspiracies, and standard stuff. An event happens. And seriously, do you see how small this book is? A lot happens in a very short amount of pages. But one of the things I absolutely adored about this first book was that you have the almighty ruler of this world who is essentially, as far as we're aware, an actual god. People view them as a god. So the inspectors and police force, as far as they're concerned, they're doing the work of God. Therefore, anything they do is right and just, and they have divine authority to act however they feel like. So the thoughts and ideas of police corruption and overreach and police brutality, they're essentially a religious organization cult that have been brainwashed. So the characters that we're following are not the worst of the worst by any means, but there are moments where they definitely overstep, but they think it's fine. They think they have every right to act this way. And I was really looking forward to what I thought would be explored in the second book, about now that they have hopefully stepped back and realized who they're working for, what they're doing, and the effects of this, that they could kind of break away from said religious cult and think, oh, I acted in this manner that was wrong of me. It is not my God-given right to do this to people. I thought we would have that breakaway in terms of self-reflection, but we're following a different character who is the protege of the two characters from the first book. No one ever told me what happened to the chicken case that we had brought up in the first book, and he was away dealing with the missing chickens. I want to know what happened to those chickens, just for the record. I'm upset that I was not told what happened to them. But he has come back after the event, and is trying to figure out what happens. And now, again, I figured we self-reflection on what they have been how they've been acting. But instead, everyone feels more cut and dry, black and white, good and bad. There was less nuance among the inspectors themselves. There was definitely some with the rebels that were introduced, but with the inspectors, it just felt like these ones are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and the good guys are not overreaching. That's the tone that I was getting from the characters in the in the second book, that was really disappointed me. And also, the new characters introduced for the second book did not hook me the way they did in the first book. But again, the end scene and end result and what they have accomplished and where they are going definitely has me more invested for the third book that has yet to be published, and I do want to know what happens. I still have no idea how the magic system works at all, but it got some interesting elements that I want to see explored. I just don't understand how it works. Fantasy is not, like, high fantasy, different universes, not my thing. I'm an urban fantasy person, so this is outside my normal vibe. Then you have A Witch's Sin, which is a different series that he has started. And I didn't actually expect to like this one really at all, just because cyberpunk I know is not my vibe. But I adored the first half of this book, which was the most cyberpunk elements. Adore the first half. 5 stars, maybe 4.75, but probably would have been a 5. Adored the first half. The characters, the dialogue, the character relationships, the world building in this, again, first half of this book was incredible. We're in this structure that have different levels and layers and floors that are all like individual cities with their own individual environments, world, politics, all that. I loved how advertisements were used, like floating computers that would take an open window as consent to come in to advertise to you. I cannot praise the world enough. There's talk about a failed colonization on Mars with possible conspiracies and stuff that was happening there. You have no idea how much I want to know what happened on Mars. 100% would read that spin-off in a heartbeat. I might not continue with this main story, but that spin-off of it, yes, 1000% yes. Clearly, I had an issue around the halfway point. So we spent so much time developing the characters, developing the relationships, and just understanding them. And without going into spoilers, vague spoiler first. Small spoiler, but I won't go too deep into spoiler. An event happens around the halfway point, I think, where we're introduced to something other than technology. I really don't want to give spoilers in this. And I'm just like, okay, so then we have to be reintroduced with this new information, this new context, these new rules, and everything feels very repetitive. It's like starting from scratch. It's like we had a story, but we didn't get the ending to the story, and now we've started a different story and reintroduced new characters. And I don't like, I can't jump around it, so I'm sorry, spoiler for this. Magic is introduced, and an actual witch. And this character, I like her in concept, but in execution just did not work for me. To start with, I don't remember how old she is, but she talks like a regular teenager, young adult. Like, she doesn't have a tone of I've been here for a very long time and I have this wisdom and power, and what I say has influence and power to it, to my words. And especially when it comes to witches, I don't know why, I just feel like if you're doing spells, the words you choose and how you talk, how you present yourself, how you communicate just should feel more impactful to me. So yeah, you're introduced to magic, and there are vampires again. I can't not talk about it for spoilers. And how they are corruption of the soul. And in concept, it sounds good, but it did not work for me after the first half, because the tonal shift, that's what it was. It's such a sudden tonal shift, and I'm reintroduced to everything. It's like we're starting from square one again. We made all this progress in my investment, and then I spent all this time with these characters, and now we're back to square one. Okay, my investment starts to pick up again as we're following the main character who is studying or training to be an enforcer, essentially detective, looking for a missing child, and a client has been killed, and conspiracy and stuff going on. So again, beginning of the book, my investment went up. Oh, we reached around the halfway point. My investment's back down here. We're building it up again. Then like the last third happens, and I will not spoil this, but oh my god, it's like we start over again. This is not an event that I feel happens in the first book. It feels like a third book thing. And again, it was in the last third. This really could have been 3 stories for me. Again, part of it could be this is not my vibe, not my regular genre. Cyberpunk, definitely not my thing. But after the halfway point, I feel like it wasn't cyberpunk anymore. I get a lot of people love this one, and I see why. The characters are great. The first half, full 5 stars for me. It was just when we kept having tonal shifts as this big twist happened, and it felt like a news story. So did not work for me. But again, spin-off stories, 100% would read. Next we have The Hidden Power of Effing Up. So, Try Guys. Love this group here on YouTube. I was watching them forever, and it is no surprise to me. It should have been no surprise, but I was surprised, which makes no sense for how much I love that book. I spent days binging Try Guys videos. Why did I think that I wouldn't enjoy a self-help book by them? It is so good. I read it in just one sitting. I could not stop. As soon as I started, I was hooked and just binged the entire thing the entire way through. Probably around a third way through, I realized that I wasn't going to stop, and I did have to be semi-productive adult. I hate having to be an adult, but yeah, so I switched to the audiobook, and that is definitely the preferred way to experience this story, just because it is narrated by the Try Guys, their interaction, their tone, their humor, their voice, their interaction, just their personalities in general makes this so entertaining, and you can't stop. Ned, of course, ruins the entire thing after the controversy with him and the events that happened with him. Hated that. Did not want to hear him talk, especially because the majority of the time it's him gushing about his wife, his actual whirlwind romance, fairy tale romance. It is beautiful, almost makes me believe in love at first sight, than to know what actually happens in real life. We're going to move past that and pretend he doesn't exist. I really was wanting to skip his chapters. I didn't, but I probably should have. So just following like humorous events with them as they try new things. One of Zach's sections made me absolutely cry and bawl. I was heartbroken. Hearing about their relationships, how they grow as people, 100%. I recommend this book, and it is so entertaining the entire time. You're laughing, you're amused, they're touching your heart. It's so nice. I love the Try Guys. All right, next we have one of my favorite horror channels here on YouTube, and that's going to be McKay. So he had he had 3 books that he read, and I did not read the third, probably for good reasons for me. All right, so we have Them, which was his first one, and Broken Dolls Deliverance. This is starting off negative and will become very positive, I promise. So Them and Broken Dolls. The biggest of biggest trigger warnings. If you think you like horror, question how much you like horror and how much you like splatterpunk extreme horror. When I say splatterpunk, I mean full splatterpunk. This is the most disturbing thing I have ever read in my life. If you were to try to guess the most disturbing thing that could actually be written and put to paper, and it is in this book, both of them, probably worse than Them. It's definitely worse than Them. Like, you wouldn't come close. You're not guessing. No. Like, I get that's the point. But, like, for Them, that's all it is. Wall to wall, pain and torture, brutality in ways you cannot understand or describe. Well, you can describe, because it's described in this book. It's narrated to it. Okay. So we're going to start with Them. And this one was not for me. I need a plot and character work to enjoy a story. This is how many pages? 190 pages of just torture. The introduction is really interesting. So essentially, you have this broadcast, and they're like saying these imposters are here. They look like us, and everything goes blank. The main character does not know what's happening, and we learn that there are aliens, something doppelgangers. They look like people you know, and they're out to murder you. You would expect this to be a very tense, unknown environment, very suspenseful, as you don't know who to trust. That building anxiety. That's what I expected for the setup, at least, of this book before we got into splatterpunk. No, absolutely not. Maybe for like 3 pages, maybe, if that. It is just, you can tell they're not right. The smile, the laugh, the tone of voice, the look in the eyes, and that they immediately just jump to murder. It is not an atmospheric read in that sense of suspense. Then you have, within the first, 3 chapters, I will have to set my phone on fire for recording what happens. So I'm not going to say it. I didn't even write it on the Goodreads because it's too brutal. And I'm like, okay. Not only was that full splatterpunk brutality, we've looped around to dark, cringy, almost funny for how ridiculously over the top it is. It's definitely try-hard, dark, cringy, in my opinion. And then it continues from torture event to torture event to torture event, and of course, repeated sexual assault, obviously, through the entire book, until the ending, which genuinely has a very good suspenseful atmosphere that I adore. I adored that ending. That last scene was exactly the atmosphere and tone that I was hoping to get. Now, I get this one was meant to be wall-to-wall splatterpunk. That's all. That is what the vibe was trying to do. And by God, did it succeed in being absolutely brutal. I just wish I cared about the characters. I wish there was more of a plot besides get from point A to point B. That the plot was, I need to get to my father because the world is ending, and within 8 hours, society has collapsed and everyone has just resorted into being monsters. Oh, there are also monsters who look like human running around murdering people. Apparently, society won't last 8 hours. So this one was not for me. The second one, however, I was far more pleasant for. So there is a second book, Just Broken Dolls, that I did not read because the similar complaints, especially with young victims. I'm like, maybe not, but McKay had said in one of his videos that he focused a lot more on character work and that there was a story beyond the extreme splatterpunk horror that he focused on in this book. And 100% so pleasantly surprised. This is definitely more my vibe. That being said, detestable, despicable, horrible, 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 horrible things happen. Do not read this. If Saw is too brutal for you, you will not be able to handle this book, okay? Like, Saw is a kind, low level in terms of horror and brutality. And this is only words. The words themselves will give you a picture. It's a lot. It's a lot. Please, if you need trigger warnings of any type, don't read it. I enjoyed this one. It still wasn't my personal vibe, but you could feel the emotion, the character work. You have 2 main characters, but they're one real specific actual main character. And his dynamic with his best friend / love interest and the dynamic that builds between them, the emotion, the hurt, me genuinely caring about their safety and wanting them to get out alive, 100%. This is more of an emotional read. The anxiety, the isolation, feeling of abandonment. There we go. The feeling of abandonment of those you love leaving you behind and terrible things happening in your life and you praying for a better tomorrow, believing with your whole, what little heart you have left, that things can and will get better in the future, only for something to happen and life to be snatched from you and all that little bit of hope that you had to be crushed. The emotions you feel and that were described and felt in this book 100% landed. Love that element of the book. An insane talent here for just bringing those emotions to you and that feeling. My personal issue is I like extreme horror that uses the extreme horror to comment on society. So extreme sexual assault, extreme brutality, extreme events happen, which leads to a young character running away, has to, yeah, prostitute himself to survive, and you understand why he's doing what he's doing, how to survive, and then gets dragged into the dark web filming videos, red rooms. It gets bad. Personal opinion, would have wanted some kind of commentary on these exploitative videos that people watch, whether that be introducing another character who is consuming these videos and quote unquote is normal, and thinks just because they're not actively participating, they're just watching it, that they're doing nothing wrong. So the commentary on this is not a victimless crime, that by watching this you are supporting this industry and real people are getting hurt. That would have been commentary that, if it had been included in the book, would have made this exactly what I was looking for. I love extreme horror, but not just for the emotions. My main thing, what I'm looking for, is its commentary on society as a whole. Same thing. The villain, over the top monster, loves what he does, brutal, and it's just so over the top, like it loops around to cartoonishly villainous. Brutal, not cartoon, brutal, but cartoonishly villainous. Like, it doesn't feel like a real person that could exist. I'm sure people like this do exist, but they don't feel real, because no one could really be that bad. Again, I get that they are that bad. They can be that bad in real life, but again, it doesn't feel real. So if they had just been less sadistic and could be interpreted as a person with a soul, or pretend to have a soul, then you could almost pair it with the businessman who's a narcissistic sociopath that doesn't care about firing a bunch of employees and sending them into poverty. Like, they don't care who they hurt so long as they get ahead. Make the villain feel real would feel more impactful to me. But those are what didn't work for me on a personal level. The book itself is an excellent execution of what it was trying to be. Extremely brutal, but a heart to these characters that you want them to succeed, you want them to be okay. And then the over the top violence. Too extreme for me in terms of the violence, without that underlying message of society. But again, excellent execution of what it was trying to be. And while I couldn't give it more than like a 3-star, I will definitely be picking up the next book he writes, because the jump in quality for my personal preference from book 1 to now book 3, outstanding. So very happy for that. And the last book was because I watch Jamie Dodger's channel. He is a trans rights activist, PhD. I can't say student anymore. I think he's got his PhD now. So yeah. He wrote a book called the T and LGBT. I couldn't even rate this book. I have no stakes in anything. I'm not part of the trans community. Anything I say, I'm just going in as I wanted some more information. Let me see what he wrote, because again, I like his channel. It's very funny. He's very humorous. I love his tone. He talks a lot about memes, and that's just always fun. So I didn't really get anything from this book that I didn't already know and learn from his YouTube channel. In terms of the process of transitioning, I think the only thing I learned is that estrogen can be spelled with an O in front of it. There's a silent O. And I'm assuming that's the British spelling, or British interpretation of it, maybe, occasional use. Don't know. That's pretty much all I learned from this, which was a little disappointing, because Jamie has his PhD, so I had really kind of went in expecting a more analytical look at studies and data. Talking about what makes a study reliable, sample size, where you get your information, because I know on his channel he'll talk about this person came out with this study that says what's rapid onset of gender dysphoria, whatever the hell that crazy lady had come out with. Come to find out, said research was, the sample size was very small, not even from a group of trans individuals, but by the parents of trans individuals on an anti-trans website. So clearly your sample set is biased. So I just thought I'd be more analytical on how you know the studies you're reading are reliable, their source, stuff like that. But it definitely wasn't an analytical look at this. It was more, definitely more personal, a very casual vibe to it, very conversational. And that conversational writing style, while making all the information accessible, did not go into the specifics that I wanted an education learned from. When I realized it was more conversational, I thought maybe it would be more personal story, more autobiographical, which there definitely is autobiographical elements to it. He goes into very personal events and situations. Nothing, or very few things that was not already discussed on his channel. Would not expect him to go into any more detail than he was comfortable with and what he was sharing. We get commentary from his wife Shaba, perfect, about her family, Jamie's family, their relationship, every single step, and how they were feeling during the transitioning process. He brings in voices of other trans and non-binary individuals. Overall, educational read for anyone who knows nothing and just wants to learn from step one what it is transitioning, what is it to be trans, and the process and legal things that happen, and just how you feel and how different perspectives react to different situations. Just not what I was overly looking for. Again, I want a more educational, analytical look at the information and data, but I read this book very quickly. It was a definitely good read. If I were to rate it, it would probably be a 4-star. I just feel bad about not giving such a personal book, especially nonfiction, and autobiographical, a full 5 stars on Goodreads. It just feels kind of cruel, especially when I have no stake in what is being talked about. All right, so those are the books that I bought because YouTube told me to, essentially. I was marketed these books by YouTubers I like. They wrote a book, and I'm like, I will buy that, add to cart. And I'm so happy that I read all of them. I enjoyed elements of all of them. And I'm picky when it comes to reading anyway, so I wasn't expecting to give any a full 5 stars, but I do recommend all of them with the trigger warnings for McKay's books. All right, that is all I got. I will talk to you later. Bye.